This is Talk with Audrey. Welcome back. Joining me now, James Cooper, the president and CEO of the Vallejo Chamber of Commerce, with an update. Welcome back, Mr. Cooper.
Thank you very much, Audrey. Glad to be back.
Appreciate you joining me. Thank you. Everybody is, small business. Small business is the lifeblood of most communities, and small businesses are suffering right now. But I understand you have some news about the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation.
I do. So last week, we got word that the U.S. Chamber Foundation was putting together a grant initiative that they called Save Small Business. And the idea behind this was trying to reach out to small businesses specifically. There's criteria that I'll go over in just a moment. And then try to bring to them small grants, $5,000 grants. These are obviously a drop in the bucket for some businesses, but much needed drops in the bucket for just about everybody. Very well-intentioned effort, very much appreciated. It was shared widely enough that the U.S. Chamber used as chambers of commerce to drive the messaging out to our small businesses community, to our small businesses in our community. That was Wednesday of last week. So Monday of this week, they at noon opened the doors and said, please submit an application. And were promptly overwhelmed by applicants to the degree where we had many of our members who wrote complaining that 4 or 5 hours of effort didn't get them anywhere to even log into the site, let alone apply.
Wow.
In terms of the group of businesses, we're talking about businesses that employ between 3 and 20, and they were located in an economically vulnerable community. They had a tool on the initial email that had you put in your zip code to determine if yours was such a community. And the third criteria was that you've been harmed by the COVID-19 pandemic and the crisis causing a shelter in place for your business. So if you think about businesses with 3 to 20 employees, that encompasses a whole lot of businesses in each community. Just roughly on the numbers, if they had over 15,000 applications that came through and sort of crashed the system, if each application is being granted $5,000, it sounds like they had roughly $75 to $100 million that they were putting forward to try and help businesses. Sounds like a lot of money when you say $100 million, but if you think about the number of small businesses in the United States and how many of them were in need of that $5,000, it really truly is just a drop in the bucket. So great effort by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, highly needed. Certainly showed in stark relief how important these sorts of grants are to our business community.
Indeed, people are hurting. And I think that what we cannot forget is that there are people who have jobs who are probably suffering at, financially at some level if they were laid off, furloughed, or if they are just straight up unemployed, right?
Yeah.
But small businesses are their employers.
Yeah.
And people are suffering. $5,000 is not a lot of money when people have this great a need. But something is always better than nothing. And I think that people are being forced to be a little more creative when it comes to how they're running their small business, whether they've gone to something online or, if they found collaborations, for instance. So how do you actually apply for this? And so I understood you mentioned that applying is tough.
Well,
how do you apply?
Yeah, apply is tough. So again, I think, U.S. Chamber had picked an organization to run their application process, and even in their knowledge and wisdom about the small business community in this country, were not adequately prepared. So in the case of that, it was get lucky.
Wow.
There's a lot of other things out there where it's not just a matter of luck, where you can apply and pursue programs. And we've talked about these programs last time you and I spoke, the PPP and the EIDL. And I wanted to make sure that I got an update about those programs as well, because our small businesses are trying to tap into those resources. And as everybody has probably heard, if you're following the news, last week, those programs were both depleted of funds. And it was understood at the time this was going to be a temporary stoppage while Congress works through what that's going to look like. It appears that, well, the Senate has passed its version. The House will vote on that version tomorrow. All things considered, it'll probably be approved fairly quickly by the House, and then we'll have a chance for the president to sign it and then to get the funding back into those programs again. The small businesses, when it comes like you were asking about applying, those programs each have posed their own challenges to small businesses in terms of understanding which program is for what, understanding how to use the funds if they were lucky enough to be approved for these funds, and then managing that process afterwards. So it's small businesses are sort of reaching for anything they think might help them float for another moment or two. U.S. Chamber, $5,000, great. The PPP, much more important for most businesses because it helps them meet the payroll costs, the costs that the people are experiencing. And so many small businesses, Audrey, if they're not running their business, they don't know that they can apply for unemployment. I mean, it's not the case where self-employed or have been eligible for those sorts of benefits in the past. So there is some of that's being brought to self-employed folks, but how do you understand it all? It can be tough. And when you finally have an application that's very simple, straightforward, here it is, $5,000, and then to not even be able to get to the website, frustrating.
I agree. That is indeed frustrating. So I understand that you don't need a lot of information when you go to that savesmallbusiness.com
Right.
site to apply. It seems simple. What information should you prepare? What
Well,
information should you be? Yeah, you know what I'm trying to say.
really, the application only required that a business has their W-9. So a very basic document that all businesses should have at hand, but we should probably speak to that in the past tense because they ran out of money within a matter of hours and they shut down the application process. So again, highlights very in stark contrast to the need that's out there. And
That is so frustrating.
yeah.
The United States isn't made up of all big businesses. It's small businesses that are the engine of the community. I myself am a small business. We're all doing what we do to the very best of our abilities to provide for ourselves and our families. And it's frustrating when you hear that other big box businesses, if you will, or multi-million dollar, billion-dollar corporations are getting monies, and small businesses who employ not just themselves, but other people in the community and support the community it's crazy. Okay, never mind. Let's talk. And it's not funny, guys,
Right.
but I just have to say, you gotta stop sometimes and just gotta chuckle. Okay,
Yeah.
so let's find another way, Mr. Cooper.
Yes. Yeah. And there are other ways. I mean,
Yes.
again, the PPP and the EIDL are the ones that have really jumped to the top during this crisis. And the additional funding options are great. I think small businesses should walk into these processes with their eyes a little more open now that we've had this sort of in front of us for a couple of weeks. The two programs, EIDL and PPP, have different application processes. So going back to your point about how to apply, the EIDL is the much easier of the two. And the EIDL, within that package of application, there is also that emergency cash grant that we talked about the previous time. That's $1,000 per employee. That's 100% forgivable. So if they were to get an EIDL loan of $25,000 and they had 10 employees, then 10,000 of that would be a grant. And when we're talking about businesses surviving, it's really key that they're not piling up additional debt in that process of surviving. So that mix of grant and loan dollars is available through the EIDL. It's simple for a business to apply for that. And they certainly should, especially now that we know almost certainly that Congress will have more money appropriated to that by probably by the end of the weekend. The PPP, on the other hand, that's a program that's run through businesses, or excuse me, through banks. And these are SBA approved lenders. And so this usually comprises the largest banks you have in your community, the Chases, Wells Fargo's, Banks of America, things of that nature. Um, but I think a lot of businesses are probably better served looking at the smaller lending institutions, for no other reason than they're going to have less applicants they're trying to work with. They're just going to have less of a rush. Uh, One of the key points that's being discussed in Congress is whether you have to have a pre-existing banking relationship with that lender in order to go through the PPP application process. And as I understand it, there are some banks that have made that a prerequisite, which further limits your opportunities if you're a business, and B, your bank doesn't have that capacity, or is just over the top busy with those applications. So um, the nice thing about the PPP is that it's 100% forgivable, but while that is very enticing, there are rules underneath that you're required to follow if you do want this money to be forgiven. And so as we're sort of waiting for all this to be set back up, I think businesses should take some time, do a little research on this, get better versed on how to implement the program once they're approved for it. And there is information available. Of course, this is the SBA website, sba.gov. There is a COVID-19 business resources tab right at the top of the page. You click on it and it'll take you into information, but you're probably going to also want to engage a CPA or somebody who really can understand how to manage that money from a tax and a banking standpoint. So,
But you need money to do that too, Mr. Cooper.
yes, you do. Yes, you do.
So again, we are all so interdependent. And I think people need to keep that in mind. This whole notion of, we all thought we were independent. Nope, not true. We are interdependent.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about, I understand that the Vallejo Chamber is also surveying its members and non-members. Tell us about that initiative.
Right. So, I mean, as we've gone through this crisis and these benefits have come forward, some of the things we've talked about in our last conversation about business frustrations, about applying for these programs, one of the things the chamber can do is it can reach back out into its community and say, so have you applied? What's your experience? Because one of the things that we do pretty well is that we can advocate on behalf of our businesses to the government, to the people that are making the rules for these programs. So if we're doing that at the grassroots level and we're channeling that up to our local congressional representatives, we're ending up communicating the experiences of the very businesses that are most in need for this. So we created a survey, and it really focuses on 4 components. It focuses on your experience with the Paycheck Protection Program, the Economic Injury Disaster Loan, asks whether you tried to apply for the Emergency Cash Grant, and then also asks about the unemployment insurance and how the additional $600 per week per employee affects or affected your decision as a business regarding your employees. So we're trying to get a sense of how our business community is engaging the act of doing business in relation to these resources. So again, next time we have a chance to talk to our congressional representative, who's Congressman Mike Thompson, we can tell him clearly what's happening with our businesses. I just put this survey out yesterday officially, and I sort of debuted it Monday late afternoon, and we've had almost 40 responses so far. So it's starting to get out there. If you're a chamber member, you've been receiving direct messages from me, and you were asked to do this on Monday. If you happen to see us on Facebook or follow us, then you saw a Facebook post about this on Tuesday. If you're interested, if you're a Vallejo business community member, the best way to complete the survey is to go to Facebook, find Vallejo Chamber, and then you'll see a post. It's either my last post or my second to last post. So it's relatively close to the top of our page.
Okay. And if you're, and it's important, I think, to recognize that, the Vallejo Chamber of Commerce is really trying to reach all businesses and help all businesses and get the perspective, because, chamber members are one thing, but there are a lot of folks yet who don't really see the benefits sometimes of being part of a chamber in their community, especially, when there are so many opportunities within it to network, to collaborate, and to support one another and figure things out, right?
Right.
And quite honestly, to bug the president about, about
Well,
what's going on.
so, a chamber of commerce, I think we represent the interests of the business community, and we take that on as a very visible role. And it doesn't just include our own members. It's truly seen by, our local officials as being representative of the entire community. And so I always encourage our businesses, whether or not you're a member, you can always contact the chamber. You can always ask us questions. You can always ask for resources. You can always tell us what you think about anything, whether it's local, regional, state, national, rulemaking that has to do with economic development, your businesses. We're not a political organization, but when you're talking to officials who are political, there's a certain amount of that happens. So I want them to feel like that they have a political voice even without the membership. And through that process, to your point, we're sort of showing that we deserve to be supported, that our work is constant. It's always focused on trying to lift our business community up. And we certainly hope that it's worth a small investment from our businesses to be part of this family, because those dollars are the dollars that we can use to help ensure our message gets to the widest audience possible.
There you go. And, I think you've wrapped it up and tied it with a bow, Mr. Cooper. I mentioned earlier that small businesses are having at this point to find ways to collaborate and support one another. And this is a whole new business climate. We don't know how long this is going to last, but every city, every state is trying to keep its businesses afloat in any way that they can, because again, businesses are part of the community. If a business closes, you really lose part of the community as well. And so it's important to keep that intact. Before I let you go, let's talk about the Chamber of Commerce website and what other information people can find there.
Thank you.
Whether you are or not a member.
Exactly. It's a website, so anybody can access the website. Certainly, if you go onto the website, you will see all of our members. There's a business directory link. There's a member news page. So when our members send us their PR, anything that's happening with them, we have a page that will actually open up over the top of the homepage, and those are all the latest news articles that you will see. A little bit down the page, if you pull it down just a smidgen, you'll see a big version of our logo. And if you click on that logo, you will access a page that we call the Vallejo Chamber Member Operations page. This is a Google document, so it's a live document that we're constantly updating, and it's comprised of our members' updated information regarding how business operations have been affected during this crisis. So I want our members to stay engaged. This is one of the ways that we can do it, is by being proactive in sharing that list. To that point, we have a local radio station, KUIC, that has taken all that information and uploaded it to their own website. And then another of our sister organizations here in town, Visit Vallejo, has a version of that service for their restaurants called Taking It to Go. So all of these are resources that if you either come to the Chamber's website, which is vallejochamber.com, or if you pop over to Visit Vallejo, which is visitvallejo.com, you'll be able to access these resources very quickly and show your support for our local business community by engaging them in a business or a service that you need.
Wonderful. Again, guys, there's a lot of information out there that's available. So check out the Vallejo Chamber of Commerce website. And again, it's always a pleasure to speak with you, Mr. Cooper, and thank you for all the work that you're doing at the Chamber to be sure that Vallejo small businesses are informed and empowered through the information that they receive to help themselves. I'll see you again, right? You're going to come back next week?
Absolutely. I'm available for you anytime.
Wonderful. Thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you, Audrey.
My pleasure. Be safe.